The Silent Hunter. Commander Elena Santos watched the alien armada through the quantum viewport of the UES Shadowdancer. 12 massive warships, each bristling with enough firepower to glass a small moon, swept through the Arcturus sector with predatory grace. They belonged to the Varketh Dominion, an empire that had spent the last 3 centuries consuming every civilization they encountered. The aliens hadn't detected the Shadowdancer yet. They couldn't. The human vessel's quantum mimetic hull rendered it virtually non-existent, bending space-time itself to hide its presence. It was technology that shouldn't exist, not according to the Varketh's understanding of physics. But then again, humanity had always excelled at doing the impossible. Status report, Elena whispered, though she knew the sound dampeners would prevent any acoustic leakage into space. Old habits died hard. Quantum signature stable, Commander. Lieutenant Raj Patel responded from his station. Their scanning beams are passing right through us. As far as they're concerned, we're just another piece of the void. Elena allowed herself a small smile. The Varketh had conquered 17 species before encountering humanity. Each time, their technological superiority had been absolute. Each time, their victims had followed the same pattern. Detect the Varketh ships, attempt communication, and ultimately fall before overwhelming force. But humanity had seen them coming decades ago. Neural network intercept is active, reported Dr. Sarah Chen, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. We're collecting terabytes of data from their ship-to-ship communications. Their encryption is primitive. That was the Varketh's fatal flaw. They had never needed to evolve better security because they had never encountered a species advanced enough to breach it. Their technology had stagnated, protected by the comfort of their superiority. They're discussing the conquest of the Sol system, Sarah continued, her voice tight with controlled anger. They think they found another primitive species to subjugate. Their long-range scans only detected our outer colony defenses. They believe we're pre-FTL. Elena's smile widened. Let's educate them. Tactical status of the quantum torpedoes. Armed and ready, Commander, responded Weapons Officer James O'Connor. Quantum warheads primed. We can hit all 12 ships simultaneously before they even register our presence. But Elena had other plans. The Varketh needed to understand exactly what they were dealing with. This wasn't going to be just another conquest. This would be the day they learned fear. Target their flagship's communications array only, Elena ordered. Minimal yield, maximum precision. Let's give them a demonstration they'll never forget. The quantum torpedo launched silently, its passage through space hidden by the same technology that concealed the Shadowdancer. On the tactical display, Elena watched it phase through the flagship's shields, technology that the Varketh believed impenetrable, and materialize inside their hull. The explosion was surgical. The flagship's communications array disappeared in a precise burst of quantum energy, leaving the rest of the massive vessel untouched. In the same instant, the Shadowdancer dropped its cloak. Open a channel, Elena commanded. Let them see us. The viewport shifted, showing the bridge of the Varketh flagship. The alien commander, a towering figure with iridescent scales and multiple sets of eyes, stared in shock at the human vessel that had appeared from nowhere. This is Commander Elena Santos of the United Earth ship Shadowdancer, she announced, her voice calm and measured. That was a demonstration of a fraction of our capabilities. Your shields cannot stop us. Your sensors cannot detect us. And right now, quantum torpedoes are locked onto the reactor cores of every ship in your fleet. The alien commander's scales shifted color in what Elena's kinepsychology training told her was a sign of fear. They had never encountered a species that could bypass their defenses so completely. Return to your empire, Elena continued. Tell them what you witnessed here. Tell them that humanity is not prey. We are not another species to be conquered. We are your worst nightmare. A species that saw you coming and spent decades preparing for this moment. The alien commander found its voice. Impossible. Our technology is superior. Your technology is stagnant, Alina corrected. While you were conquering helpless civilizations, we were innovating, evolving, preparing. You never noticed us because we didn't want you to notice. Until now. She leaned forward slightly. You have 1 hour to retreat from this sector. If you ever return with hostile intent, you will learn exactly how many other technological surprises we have waiting. Shadow dancer out. As the channel closed, Alina watched the alien fleet's reaction. For the first time in their history, the Varketh faced something they didn't understand, couldn't overcome with brute force. The predators had become prey. They're powering up their drives, Raj reported. Setting course back to Varketh's space. They're running. Alina nodded. This was just the beginning. The Varketh would return, of course. Wounded pride would demand it. But by then, humanity would be ready to reveal even more of their capabilities. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology. It was their capacity to instill fear in those who had never known it. The Hive's mistake. Supreme Overlord Kithax stood before the Great Council of the Varketh Dominion, his scales still shifting between colors of rage and humiliation. The massive chamber, carved from living crystal deep within their homeworld, echoed with murmurs of disbelief as he finished his report of the encounter with the human vessel. Impossible, Elder Vizoth declared, his ancient scales darkening with skepticism. No species could have developed such technology without our knowledge. Our surveillance networks spanned the galaxy. The humans didn't just hide their ship, Kithax responded, his voice tight with suppressed fury. They hid their entire technological development from us. Our long-range scans showed primitive colonies, basic space stations. It was all deception. The council chamber erupted in debate. For 3 centuries, the Varketh had relied on their hierarchical hive mind network, a biological quantum web linking their species' consciousness. It had given them perfect coordination in battle, instant sharing of knowledge, and absolute certainty in their superiority. But they had never encountered a species that could simply vanish from existence. We have assembled the Liberation Fleet, Kax continued, pushing past his wounded pride. 300 warships, our most powerful force ever gathered. The humans caught us by surprise once. They will not do so again. High Commander Ralith, leader of the Dominion's military forces, raised a clawed hand. And if their vessel wasn't unique, if they have an entire fleet of these ghost ships. Impossible, Kithax repeated, but doubt crept into his voice. The energy requirements alone. The chamber's crystal walls suddenly pulsed with crimson light. Alarm signals screamed through the hive mind network. Kithax staggered as alien thoughts invaded the quantum web. Impossible thoughts, chaotic and fragmented. Multiple human vessels detected. The announcement cut through the panic. They're already inside our defense perimeter. The Great Council's holographic displays flickered to life, showing 5 human warships materializing from empty space. They were different from the Shadow dancer. Larger, more angular, bristling with visible weapon systems. They had dropped their cloaks deliberately, wanting to be seen. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Fleet. A human voice echoed through the chamber, transmitted directly through the Varketh's supposedly secure networks. We apologize for interrupting your council meeting, but we thought a more comprehensive demonstration was in order. Kithax felt cold fear spread through his scales. They were inside the Varketh homeworld's defenses, broadcasting through the hive mind itself. Everything the Dominion had believed about their security was a lie. You see, Admiral Chen continued, her voice almost conversational. We've been watching you for a very long time, learning your technologies, understanding your weaknesses. Commander Santos showed you we could hide our ships. Now let us show you what else we can do. The human vessels opened fire, not at the planet, but into seemingly empty space. Quantum torpedoes detonated in precise patterns, and suddenly the void lit up with explosions as hundreds of cloaked Varketh defense platforms were revealed and destroyed. You hid your weapons in plain sight, Chen noted, thinking no one could detect them. but we've been mapping them for years. Every secret installation, every hidden fleet. We know where all of them are." The council chamber descended into chaos. Through the hive mind, Cathax felt the collective terror of his species as they realized the true extent of their vulnerability. "This is your final warning," Chen declared. "The Varketh Dominion will cease all expansionist activities immediately. You will release your conquered worlds and establish diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council. If you refuse, we will be forced to demonstrate our more aggressive capabilities." As if to emphasize her point, one of the human ships fired a single shot into deep space. Moments later, the Varketh's furthest military outpost, a fortress world on the edge of their territory, went dark in the hive mind. "That was a quantum isolation field," Chen explained. "Your entire fortress is now cut off from the hive mind network. 3 million of your people, unable to connect to the collective consciousness. We can expand that field to cover your entire empire if necessary." Cathax felt the collective horror of the council. To be cut off from the hive mind was a fate worse than death for their species. The humans hadn't just defeated their military. They had found a way to attack the very core of Varketh society. "You have 6 hours to begin the withdrawal from your conquered territories," Chen concluded. "We'll be watching, always watching." The human ships vanished again, leaving the Varketh leadership staring into empty space. For the first time in their history, the predators of the galaxy had become prey, hunted by a species that had turned their own arrogance against them. The age of Varketh dominion was over. The age of humanity had begun. Neural warfare. Dr. Maya Patel stood before the holographic representation of the Varketh hive mind network, its quantum connections spreading like a vast, crystalline web through space. In the secure depths of Earth's Quantum Defense Institute, she and her team had spent years studying this alien consciousness, preparing for this moment. Their entire society depends on this network, she explained to the assembled military leadership. It's not just communication, it's the foundation of their identity as a species. And now it's their greatest weakness. Fleet Admiral James Chen, father of Sarah Chen and architect of humanity's defense strategy, studied the display intently. They're starting to adapt their protocols, trying to shore up their defenses against our intrusion. Maya allowed herself a small smile. Too late. We're already inside their system at a fundamental level. They can't patch quantum entanglement itself. The hologram shifted, showing thousands of points of light representing Varketh ships and installations. Many were dark now, cut off from the hive mind by human quantum isolation fields. The alien empire was fragmenting, its conquered territories slipping from its grasp as isolated commanders were forced to think and act independently for the first time in generations. "Their leadership is fracturing," reported Colonel Diana Rodriguez, head of synopsychology. "The Great Council can't maintain control without absolute consensus through the hive mind. We're seeing the first signs of independent thought emerging in isolated sectors." "And the slave species?" Admiral Chen asked. "Rising up," Diana confirmed. "Once we showed them the Varketh could be defeated, resistance movements activated across 17 systems. Our quantum weapons caches, hidden on their worlds decades ago, are being put to good use." Maya zoomed in on a particular sector of the network. "But the Varketh aren't finished yet. They're attempting something desperate, trying to evolve their hive mind to a new level of consciousness. If they succeed, they might be able to overcome our quantum isolation fields." Admiral Chen's expression hardened. "Can they do it?" "Not if we implement Phase 3, Maya replied. She gestured, and a new simulation appeared. A cascading wave of quantum disruption that would forever change the nature of Varketh consciousness. "This is the key to their evolution," she explained, highlighting a complex pattern in their quantum network. "Their hive mind is trying to achieve a single, unified consciousness, one that could theoretically match human cognitive flexibility. But we can use that same process to introduce something they've never experienced before: individuality." Understanding dawned in the Admiral's eyes. You're not going to shut down their network. You're going to transform it. Maya nodded. Every Varkath connected to the hive mind will suddenly experience true individual consciousness, unique thoughts, personal desires, independent will. Their society is built on perfect consensus. They have no framework for dealing with individual perspectives. The psychological shock would be enormous, Diana added, but survivable. And ultimately, perhaps the most humane way to end this conflict, they'll be forced to evolve socially, not just technologically. Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment, considering the implications. The Varkath we know would cease to exist. They're already ceasing to exist, Maya countered. Right now, they're experiencing fear, doubt, uncertainty, emotions their hive mind previously suppressed. We're not destroying them. We're giving them the chance to become something more than conquerors. Alarms suddenly blared through the facility. The holographic display shifted, showing a massive movement of Varkath forces. They're making their move, Admiral Chen announced grimly. The surviving fleet elements are converging on Earth, a last, desperate attack to try to decapitate human leadership. Maya's hands flew across her quantum interface. They found a way to partially shield their ships from our isolation fields. Crude, but effective. They're willing to sacrifice everything for one final strike. Admiral Chen straightened, his decision made. Then we give them their evolution ahead of schedule. Dr. Patel, initiate Phase 3. Colonel Rodriguez, alert our fleet. I want every quantum-capable ship ready to support the Varkath vessels when their crews start experiencing individual consciousness for the first time. Maya began the initialization sequence, her quantum processors reaching deep into the fabric of space-time. Transmission in 3 minutes. The cascade will reach every connected Varkath simultaneously. As the countdown began, she watched the holographic representation of an entire species on the brink of fundamental change. Humanity had not just defeated the Varkath, they had forced them to confront the ultimate terror, the responsibility of individual thought and free will. The diplomatic dance. Ambassador Julia Chen sat across from first speaker Thax in the neutral space station Harmony, watching the former Supreme Overlord struggle with his newly individual consciousness. His scales shifted through complex patterns of color that the xenopsychologists were still learning to interpret. The visual language of Varkath emotion had become far more nuanced since the consciousness cascade. The transition has been difficult, Thax admitted, his voice carrying unfamiliar undertones of uncertainty. Many of our people are still struggling to cope with individual thought, with disagreement, with the concept of personal choice. We understand, Julia responded softly. That's why we're here. Humanity didn't want to destroy the Varkath. We wanted to help you evolve beyond the limitations of your hive mind. The space station's observation dome offered a stunning view of the combined fleet outside. Human ships and Varkath vessels floating side by side. Medical teams and consciousness specialists were still working around the clock, helping the alien species adapt to their new reality. Some call you monsters, Thax said, his scales rippling with complex emotions. They say you committed genocide, not of our bodies, but of our way of life. Others, his colors shifted to a new pattern. Others say you gave us the gift of true consciousness, freed us from a kind of slavery we never knew we suffered. And what do you believe? Julia asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Thax had been among the first to call for peace after the cascade. I believe, he paused, savoring the personal nature of the thought. I believe that I am grateful to finally know who I am as an individual, even though that knowledge brings pain and confusion. But there are practical matters we must discuss. Julia nodded. This was why they were here, to determine the future relationship between their species. The liberated worlds will remain free, Thax stated firmly. That is one thing almost all Varkath agree on now. I feel shame for what we did to them. Individual consciousness has brought individual moral responsibility. He activated a holographic display showing the former Varketh Empire. But we need help. Our society was built around the hive mind. Our infrastructure, our technology, our very architecture assumed constant collective consciousness. Without humanity's assistance, we face collapse. We've already prepared a comprehensive aid package, Julia replied, sending the details to his terminal. Technology to help maintain essential services, medical support for those still struggling with the transition, educational resources to help your people understand and embrace individuality. Thax's scales shifted to a pattern she recognized as surprise. You had this ready before our meeting. We've had it ready for decades, Julia admitted. Humanity's strategy was never just about defeating the Varketh. We spent years preparing to help you become something greater than conquerors. The former Supreme Overlord was quiet for a long moment, processing this with his new individual perspective. Your species is terrifying, he finally said, but his scale patterns showed respect rather than fear. You didn't just predict our actions. You prepared for our redemption before we even knew we needed it. Humanity has had a long, hard road to wisdom, Julia responded. Our history is full of conflicts between collective ideology and individual rights. We learned that true strength comes from balancing unity with individuality. We wanted to share that lesson, rather than simply destroying you. Thax's scales rippled with a new pattern, one that the xenopsychologists would later identify as hope. There are questions my people need answered. Philosophical debates that would have been impossible under the hive mind. Will you help us explore them? Of course, Julia smiled. That's why we've proposed the establishment of cultural exchange centers on both Earth and the Varketh homeworld. Your people can learn about individual expression from us, while we learn from your experience of collective consciousness. Together, we might discover new ways of thinking that neither of our species could achieve alone. Outside the station, a Varketh ship performed an impromptu maneuver, a spiral pattern that would have been impossible under the rigid control of the hive mind. It was an expression of individual creativity, perhaps the first of its kind in their species' history. To think, Thax mused, watching the display. We thought we were coming to negotiate terms of surrender. Instead, we're discussing the terms of our species' rebirth. That's the greatest weapon humanity ever developed, Julia replied. Not our technology, not our stealth ships or quantum weapons. It's our ability to see potential for growth in our adversaries, and our willingness to help them achieve it. As they continued their discussions, Julia knew that this was just the beginning. The Varketh's journey to true individuality would take generations, but humanity would be there to guide them every step of the way. They had transformed an enemy into an ally, not through force alone, but through the most human quality of all, the desire to help others grow beyond their limitations. Evolution's children. 20 years after the consciousness cascade, the observation deck of the Galactic Council's new headquarters offered a view that would have been impossible in the old order. Dr. Maya Patel, now significantly grayer but still sharp as ever, stood beside Thax, watching ships from a dozen species moving through the traffic lanes above New Earth. The most striking were the new Varketh vessels. Their once rigidly uniform design philosophy had exploded into a riot of individual expression. Each ship now reflected its captain's personality. From sleek racing curves to practical angular forms, their hulls painted with patterns that would have been unthinkable under the hive mind. The last of the adaptation centers closed yesterday, Thax announced, his scales showing the complex color pattern of pride tinged with nostalgia. The youngest generation of Varketh has fully embraced individual consciousness. They can barely comprehend how we lived before. Maya smiled, remembering the long years of work that had led to this moment. And the quantum network. Transformed, as you predicted, Thax replied. Instead of enforcing uniformity, it now facilitates the sharing of individual perspectives. We've learned to be both one and many, something we never imagined possible. Below them, in the sprawling complex of the council headquarters, Representatives from former Varketh slave species sat alongside their one-time oppressors, working together to forge a new galactic society. The consciousness cascade hadn't just changed the Varketh, it had revolutionized the entire power structure of known space. "There's something I've always wanted to ask you," Kthak said, his scales shifting to the pattern that indicated deep thought. "How much of this did humanity actually plan? The cascade, the adaptation, the new council. Did you know it would unfold this way?" Maya considered the question carefully. "We planned for possibilities. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our strategies. It's our ability to imagine different futures and prepare for them all. We had thousands of contingency plans, dozens of potential paths forward." She gestured at the bustling activity below. "But this specific outcome? No. We hoped, we prepared, but the final result came from something we couldn't plan. The choices your people made once you had the freedom to choose." An alert chimed softly, drawing their attention to a nearby display. The first deep space expedition, crewed jointly by humans and Varketh, was preparing to launch. The ship incorporated technologies from both species. Human quantum stealth systems merged with evolved Varketh consciousness-sharing networks. "They're calling it the Evolution Project," Kthak noted, watching the preparations. "The first attempt to find and uplift other pre-spaceflight civilizations, not to conquer them, but to guide them, to help them avoid the mistakes both our species made." "Your people have come far," Maya observed. "From conquerors to mentors in a single generation." Kthak's scales rippled with amusement. "We had good teachers. Though I must admit, some of us are still disturbed by how long humanity watched us, prepared for us, planned for every contingency. The species we thought were primitive turned out to be master strategists playing a game centuries long." "We had to be," Maya replied. "When we first detected your empire's expansion, we knew conventional warfare would only lead to mutual destruction. We needed a solution that would transform an enemy into an ally. That required patience, understanding, and the wisdom to see past immediate victory to long-term peace. The expedition ship engaged its engines, its hybrid technology, creating a beautiful display of quantum effects visible from the observation deck. It was a symbol of what could be achieved when different species and perspectives worked together." "The younger Varketh have a saying now," Kthak said, watching the ship begin its historic journey. "They say that the humans didn't defeat us. They completed us. By forcing us to confront individuality, you helped us achieve a deeper unity than the hive mind ever allowed." Maya nodded, understanding the profound truth in those words. Humanity's greatest victory hadn't come from their superior technology or strategic planning, but from their fundamental belief that even the most implacable enemy could change, grow, and evolve. As the expedition ship disappeared into quantum space, Maya reflected on the true legacy of the consciousness cascade. It wasn't just the transformation of the Varketh, or the liberation of their subject species, or even the creation of the new Galactic Council. It was the proof that intelligence, compassion, and the courage to imagine a better future could overcome even the most entrenched patterns of conflict. The stars beckoned, filled with new civilizations waiting to be discovered. And this time, they would be greeted not by conquerors or victims, but by evolution's children, species that had learned to balance unity with individuality, strength with wisdom, and power with responsibility. Humanity's greatest weapon had turned out to be hope. Hope in the possibility of change, in the potential for growth, and in the fundamental capacity of all sentient beings to evolve beyond their limitations. It was a legacy that would echo through the galaxy for generations to come.